Most dredge matchups aren't going much beyond turn 6 or 7.
Yeah, so Drew, obviously, for those of you who may not know, premium writer for Star City.
Yep.
Writes about Legacy all the time. Legacy is his format. And I think if anybody's going to respect Dredge as a deck, it's going to be Drew. Like, he knows it's there. He knows that the rise and fall kind of pattern of Dredge. And so I think he's probably prepared for Dredge.
And one of the interesting things about Drew is he kind of noticed that vacancy for someone to really focus on Legacy. And as the Open Series was starting up with Legacy on day 2s, it started to get more and more popular. Drew really dug into it, and he has a great series of articles about kind of introducing you to Legacy. And another great thing about the format in my mind is it's still relevant. Because the cards haven't rotated, they may not be the decks may not be exactly the same, but if you're looking to just kind of get an overview, take a look in the archives on StarCityGames.com for some of Drew Levin's articles, just talking about the archetypes, the different styles. He talks about the control decks, the aggro decks, the combo decks, and the different things. And he talked about ad nauseum back in the day. He talked about Charbelcher back in the day. Charbelcher had a really great weekend in Nashville, was very positive in terms of its win percentage, and it's one of those decks that just pops up from time to time because the cards don't rotate. The guy who plays Charbelcher really knows Charbelcher inside and out. Comes to a tournament 5 years down the road, pops Charbelcher out of his bag, updates 8 cards, goes and plays.
Yep. 13-7-1 in Nashville, is that right?
Yep.
So, definitely good
Drew
show.
looks like he's throwing it back. Do we have who's going first? So Damon over here on the right with Dredge, Drew on the left, playing primarily just a blue Stifle Knot deck that he's got some red in for lightning bolts, and then he's got green so that he can pull Life from the Loam and Tarmogoyf out of that board.
And Nature's Claim.
And Nature's Claim to plug in. So that green is in there just so that he can pull in some really strong sideboard cards.
Drew's on the play?
Yep.
Okay.
Drew on the play. Doesn't even look like Damon has... So Damon has kept his 7. Drew going down to 6 here.
So any interesting rules situations come up today?
Legacy's always good for rules.
One of the reasons I asked.
Honestly, one of the most important things in Legacy is that a lot of the cards don't actually read the same as as their Oracle text.
Now we're underway. Drew keeps the 6, leads with the Polluted Delta. And the Lion's Eye Diamond from Damon. And a Cephalid Coliseum. Immediately cracks the diamond. And the Coliseum.
Now, one of the fun things about being on the draw for Damon is that by cracking the Lion's Eye Diamond, pitching his hand, he now has Threshold with which to use the Cephalid Coliseum that he played. So, looks like we're going to get back a Golgari Grave Troll, dredging 6.
Dredge's card number 1, Dredge card number 2. And
Dredge card number 3.
Wow, this is about the best.
So he had 3 Grave Trolls, which he immediately pitches because it's draw 3, discard 3. And so he got one Narcomoeba off that. He now has
way more than 1 Narcomoeba.
He pitched 2 out of his opening hand with a Lion's Eye Diamond. And he's got a couple of Cabal, in fact, the full set of Cabal therapies in his graveyard that he can. Looks like he is going to sacrifice to Cabal therapy, and is that Drew force of willing it by?
Yeah, I think he force of willed it.
Yes.
Before he.
So
deep analysis.
Damon had a deep analysis that made it in there, which was force of willed by Drew, removing a force of will, Cabal therapy, naming engineered explosives, nets him 2 zombie tokens, and it looks like Damon is just going to rip his hand apart.
Speaking of rip, Drew plays Riptide Laboratory.
So here's an Icarid coming back, removing Putrid Imp. And if you're confused about what's going on here, don't worry, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So here's another Narcomoeba's going to make it in. Another Icarid hits the bin off of that one. The zombie and the Icarid come in. It's likely that with a Jace, and I didn't see the second card that Drew had in his hand, Jace is probably going to get torn away by another Cabal therapy here.
Yeah, probably. It was a
lightning bolt?
Okay.
So we had a Jace and a lightning bolt, and so that lightning bolt seems like it's probably going to get used right here.
Yep. Bolt the Narcomoeba.
So with the Narcomoeba dying, he gets some more zombies. I'm not sure that... So he's going to sacrifice the Icarid, which would have gone away at the end of the turn anyways, to get rid of the Jace.
Alright. Drew empty-handed, draws for his turn, passes back. We didn't quite see what he drew. But now Damon gets some Icarids, removes
has some zombies,
there,
dredges a grave troll, and there's a dread return, another bridge from below, and Drew's just about to get punched in the face for a lot. So that's
like
16.
Wait.
And it's at this point that Drew does some math and decides that he will do a little bit better in game 2, pulling in some cards that might actually help him here.
I don't know that it could have gone better for Damon. Just turn 1, like you said, on the draw, being able to play LED, Coliseum, and then hitting 3 Grave Trolls. Like, it really doesn't get any better than that. And
That's the type of game that makes you ask, should you choose to draw?
Yeah. Versus Dredge, yeah, that seems like a reasonable reasonable question.
Your ideal lead is probably a breakthrough, where you can get rid of everything and set up your graveyard, but I'm not sure that you could do any better than immediate threshold off the Lion's Eye Diamond and pop your Cephalid Coliseum with a couple of Grave Trolls to bring back.
Yeah.
The 2 Narcomoebas that he had to discard rather than having in the deck to be able to flip over weren't ideal, but such a huge push right off the bat.
Drew really couldn't do much at all. Why didn't you force him will the LED, says
So
the Pratzer.
Definitely a question there.
Or why didn't Drew play Engineered Explosives turn 1? Interesting too. Interesting point. I mean, he could play it for 0, right? And then bust it when he had 2 men.
And so,
considering Drew did know what he was playing against, that's a fair question.
He hadn't seen the Cephalid Coliseum. You've got to think that the Dredge player is going to be able to fill up his graveyard. The question is whether you're trying to hold back against more active spells.
Right.
I mean, now if he had Force of Willed that LED, probably would have changed that game a lot.
Significantly, yeah. Force of Will on the LED would have, Damon wouldn't have gotten anywhere near that kind of stuff.
With the 2 Narcomoebas and the 2 Grave Trolls in his hand, he would have been able to play the Cephalid Coliseum, but obviously without Threshold, it doesn't do much. So clearly would have been the right play with full knowledge, but the question is whether or not that's enough to really make you want to remove your Force of Will to Force of Will, because that's pretty much all he had there.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like how many times has has Drew played against Dredge where they played a turn 1 LED and it not resulted in a blowout like that? You know, like every time they have the LED turn 1 doesn't mean anything. You know, doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of times, you know, the LED comes down and just sits there. You know, cast the LED, I'll use it when I need it. You know, so Drew may not have felt like it was very threatening, at least not at that point, and figured he'd rather hold the force of will for something else. So, but in this case, I think it would have been, you know, in hindsight, Drew forcing the LED would have made for a much more interactive game, I think. Whether or not the result would have been different,
now,
you know, no way to know.
The way that Drew's hand was set up, he really had one force of will that he could use, because I think he really wanted to get that Jace down.
Yeah, he didn't want to force removing the Jace. So he's
and also, if he does force removing the Jace, he needs another blue card in order to set the other force up.
John Medina says Drew probably thought he was playing against Ad Nauseam Tendrils, but Drew ran by the booth saying they both know what each other are playing. So Drew should have known he was playing against Dredge, unless for some reason Damon lied to him. I don't know.
It looks like we've got the 4 Firestorms from Damon's sideboard coming in, and it looks like, trying to see what's coming out here. It's a blue card.
Yeah, I saw something blue from it. So there was a question on whether or not Drew was running ley lines. He is not.
No, Drew just has. You got to think the surgical extractions are coming in.
Yeah, 3 surgical extractions, a Tormod script.
Yep. Now, do the Pyroblasts come in? Because breakthrough is important. Deep analysis is a possible card that you might want to deal with, but looks like that may actually be the card that was coming out for Damon.
Yeah, it looks like that. One thing pointed out through Twitter, and also Matt pointing it out, what you got it from Twitter, right, was that Damon maybe should have Cabal Therapied first, naming Force of Will, and then playing Deep Analysis. I think that's obviously, that makes a lot more sense than doing it the other way around. That way he loses the Force of Will either way.
He may have been getting a little bit greedy, kind of trying to get another bridge in there before he sacrifices the creature to the Cabal Therapy. Yeah. But I definitely agree. You want to... The Cabal Therapies are there to protect you. You got to use them to protect yourself.
Yeah. Examining some tokens there. It's like...
So Drew didn't get to do a whole lot in that game.
No, not at all. I think he played Polluted Delta and lost. He did Force of Will Deep Analysis.
Yep.
Deep Analysis is a card I kind of almost expected maybe a reprint of in Innistrad. Just thought it would be neat. Maybe it doesn't fit the theme Deep Analysis. I don't know. It's not really...
Well, with no flashback costs other than mana in the first set, you might see it down the road.
Yeah,
with flashback coming back around.
We did the Think Twice, so can't complain about that. Love the Think Twice.
Absolutely. So Drew will once again be on the play.
Presumably, at least.
And Damon will hope that his hand is just as busted on the draw as it was last time. So let's see. And so Drew leads off with a Sensei's Divining Top. So we just got a question. Someone's asking about whether or not they might reprint Mystical Teachings in Innistrad block. I think it's a little more on theme for it than Deep Analysis might be, But with Forbidden Alchemy already there, I think it would be a tough sell to put both of those in the format together.
I agree. Meantime, Damon just has City of Brass.
Definitely a little less explosive than last game.
A little bit less explosive than last game. Drew adds another polluted delta. And is...
Damon's ready to take a point of damage to throw out a Cabal Therapy for some disruption. So it looks like we've got Surgical Extraction, Jace, Trinket Mage, Brainstorm, and Wooded Foothills.
He named Engineered Explosives? Okay.
And so Damon naming Engineered Explosives is going to miss here, but the information is almost as important.
Yep. That's what makes Cabal Therapy so good. It's just sometimes you hit, but you
Drew drops a Wooded Foothills, passes it back over. Damon's keeping his hand under wraps here, as opposed to last game where he just put it in the graveyard.
All right, so he has a Cephalid Coliseum, and looks like he's using some mana to play.
All right,
Narcomoeba.
That good old hard cast Narcomoeba.
Yeah, that's unconventional.
Drew will top. And Cabal Therapy is probably going to hit something this time.
So Narcomoeba resolves and immediately gets sacrificed to the flashback cost on Cabal Therapy. Drew responds to the flashback with Surgical Extraction on the Narcomoeba.
And Damon's hand is Ancient Grudge, Firestorm, Gemstone Mine, Golgari Thug, and another Cephalid Coliseum. So not much action going on here.
Extracting the Narcomoeba seems pretty strong.
And with knowledge that Extraction's in his hand,
Damon opened himself
up to that.
Yeah, he knew that, or at least he should have known that was a possibility, putting the Narcomoeba in his graveyard.
Sorry. And so even if he names Surgical Extraction there, there's still a window for Drew to
play it,
extract the Narcomoeba, and that
may be what did he name?
It's so central to his deck. That's pretty tough.
It must have been Trinket Mage. He must have named Trinket Mage since
Yep.
that's what Drew just threw away. So
he gets the Trinket Mage, the extraction goes, and we saw a third card that I missed. Stifle. From Drew.
Yep.
So Damon's just going to leave his hand on the table. Hey, you know what I've got? We'll keep it here.
Yeah, good point. You do name on the resolution of Cabal Therapy, right? So he wouldn't have named Extraction ahead of time.
That's true. Yep.
Firestorm, Damon. Damon taking
now
a lot of pain.
There's two ways to discard. There's a way to discard two cards here, but it involves hitting himself, which it looks like he's doing. So it's going to be 2 damage to Drew and 2 damage to Damon in order to discard Golgari Thug and Gemstone Mine.
Yeah. So he still
working towards threshold here.
He still has Cephalid Coliseum and Ancient Grudge in hand, right?
Yep.
He's taking a lot of damage.
Thug's going to come back.
Here. Dredge is back with Thug. He's taken a lot of damage from his own City of Brasses and or Cities of Brass and the Firestorm as well. So we get a life total check on Damon.
Plays the second Coliseum. And at this point, he could play the Grudge and hit Threshold and force Drew to put that top back on top of his library.
Right.
and that activates his Coliseum, but he doesn't have a way to get the Thug in the graveyard to dredge with it off the first Coliseum. He'd have to use the first Coliseum to pitch a couple of enablers, but he'd just be doing it cold with no dredge cards in the bin.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's thinking kind of the same thing right here, trying to figure out what's his best play here. Yeah, he can.
Definitely, and I've got stuff to do. I just don't like it.
Yeah, not ideal. Well, he used up a lot of his good luck, I think, in game one. Now he's gonna have to fight.
He's gonna have to hope that it wasn't just everything there.
Yeah. Hopefully he didn't use up all of his karma.
We've got a question on what's Drew's dread return what's Damon's dread return target. In his main deck, he has a Sphinx of Lost Truth and a Terracodon, and out of the board, he's got access to an Iona.
So Damon did, as we suspected, grudging the top and
activated his Coliseum, but that was met with Drew's Stifle.
Yeah.
Drew's going to brainstorm here.
At least this game is much more interactive.
Attention Magic players, in Commander number 3. Commander number 3, please report to Secretary, please.
So Drew's going to go fetch some lands so that he can actually do things.
Yeah, I think he can cast spells.
There's the Tropical Island and Tropical Island. And 3 is going to play a Trinket Mage. Just keep your deck in your hand. And at that point, Damon's graveyard is going away.
Tormod's Crypt takes care of that. So,
and Damon is in a little bit of tough shape here.
Yeah,
but Drew's
sure.
not really putting on a whole lot of pressure.
No, not
that
much
Trinket
pressure
Mage going to get the Tormod script was the safe play, definitely, but not the aggressive play.
So Cabal Therapy, naming Jace the Mind Sculptor, hits Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yep.
Leaving Drew with just a single unknown card, I believe, because he's cast the Brainstorm. And it
looks like they're Tarmogoyfs. And at this point, Damon says, I can't do this without a graveyard.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, but, he needs his graveyard kind of more than he needs his library,
So those Tarmogoyfs obviously came in.
Yeah.
And the Spell Snares, we've got to guess, came out. But we've also seen the Surgical Extractions and the Tormod script. So that means some more stuff came out. We saw the Trinket Mages. We haven't seen any clicks. We haven't seen any Snapcaster Mages. But what do you think were the other cards to come out? Probably.
So if he brought in all the Surgical Extractions, which I think he would have.
You've got it.
And probably all the Tarmogoyfs.
Yep.
Considering he just drew 2 in like a few turns, I think he probably has more than 2. I'm going to say he boarded out 8 cards. So if he boards out all the
Force Mail Stairs. I think probably the 2 Dismembers.
Yeah, that seems good, and maybe he could shave down on the Force of Will or Counterspell he's got there. He obviously kept the 1 top, kept some number of Stifles. Yep. Maybe he boarded out the Vendilion clicks, considering maybe they're.
I don't know. There's not going to be much of a hand to cycle, so unless he's going to use them proactively on himself, they're not going to be very effective against Damon.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking about with the click. So maybe that's what it is.
So there's a couple of cards that could fill in those last spots. You got to be pretty sure those Spell Snares came out, and then probably the other ones. Dismember doesn't really have any good targets. You're going to hit an Icarid, or you're going to hit maybe an Enabler, but
nothing you really want to use a Dismember on. So it seems to me that all makes sense. I wonder how Damon would sideboard.
Yep. So out of the sideboard, we've seen his Firestorms. We've seen at least one of the Ancient Grudges, and we know that a couple of Deep Analysis came out. but we're not sure what the other cards that came out were. The other blue cards we saw when he was shuffling through his sideboard, he's got a couple of Memories Journey.
It's that new one. From,
that's
the new Gaia's Blessing-ish card, right?
Allows you to shuffle the cards in, and it's got flashback. I believe it's shuffle in 3.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Shuffle up to 3 target cards from his or her graveyard into his or her library, and it's got a flashback of a green.
Yep.
It is an instant.
And then I'm not sure what else would have come out there. Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about synergy with the Merfolk deck.
Yep.
Dredge, similar.
It's all about the cards working together.
Yeah, so you can't dilute the deck too much, or else you're gonna have a lot of trouble.
Yep.
Effectively executing a strategy.
So what we saw in Game 2 was a pretty good example of if they have the hate for you.
Yeah.
Dredge has got some problems. Those Narcomoebas going away, and then the Tormod script, which he was able to search up, really just shut Damon out of the game.
Yeah, that was exactly how Drew wrote it up, I think. Has the additional pressure also in the form of double Tarmogoyf.
Yep. And one of the other things is, because the sideboard against Dredge is so effective, the cards that you do have, mulliganing aggressively to get to them, since they cripple Dredge so much,
it's actually worth it.
It's worth it. If you don't see the cards that you need in your 7-card hand, you might mulligan an otherwise playable opening 7, going after the Trinket Mage that can fetch the Tormod script, or the Tormod script itself, or just a surgical extraction.
Right. There's some number of, or at least one of your hate cards to slow down the Dredge deck enough to where you can draw what Damon would be a better.
Looks like Damon's going to keep his opening 7.
I saw
a couple of Narcomoebas, Firestorm, Cabal Therapy, Breakthrough. And so since he's got the land to play the Breakthrough, looks like that's going to be pretty good. Drew will mulligan aggressively.
Mulligan, yeah. So mulligan game 1 didn't work out so good for him, but hopefully he learned a little.
That's all right. He's on the draw this game.
Good point. That may make all the difference.
So that Gemstone
Mine?
Yep.
I was getting Gemstone Mine and Gemstone Cavern's names mixed up.
Yep. That Gemstone Mine's going to allow Damon to play that Breakthrough right off the bat. It'll be interesting to see if Drew can pull a Force of Will, because that Lion's Eye Diamond resolving on turn 1 was the key in game 1.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that first enabler, let's see whether Drew's a little more proactive on trying to fight it.
So we got a question from Twitter. Can you stifle Iona's ability?
Iona's ability is a continuous ability. When it comes in, you're going to choose it. So as it reads, as Iona, Shield of Emeria, enters the battlefield, choose a color. There's no way to respond to a choice. Since it's a choice, it's simply a continuous ability that Iona has. There's no triggered ability or activated ability to stifle.
Figured that would be good to bring up while a judge was in the booth. So Wasteland on the Gemstone Mine.
And interestingly, did not turn 1. Did not turn 1 the Breakthrough. And so Firestorm for 2. So once again hitting both himself and Drew for 2. And pitching a Narcomoeba and
an imp, right?
Yep. No, sorry, it was a Stinkweed imp.
Stinkweed? Yeah.
Yep. So Damon is going to be able to dredge this next turn, provided that Drew does not have a surgical extraction in his hand to hit his. So
Damon declines to dredge 2 turns in a row. Both players just playing no land.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Drew draws another Wasteland, plays it, and passes. Wow.
This does not look like a strong hand for Drew. Honestly, in this type of game,
it looks better for Damon right now, I think. But maybe Drew has a very hateful hand, and he's waiting for something that he discards a Jace.
Yep. I was confused why he wasn't dredging the.
Yeah, earlier. I'm not sure why he wasn't dredging, but.
And so looks like he dredged 6. We're gonna have a looking at extra cards infraction, and we'll just shuffle that extra card right back in.
The 6th card was a bridge from below.
Yep.
Which is exactly the card that Damon wants.
That would have been nice to hit as opposed to.
Yeah, it would have been right on top.
Yep.
For,
and so we did also hit 1 Narcomoeba, and I can't quite see whether there's a Cabal Therapy as that card. No, it looks like it's 2 Putrid Imps that we hit.
Yeah.
All right. So that Narcomoeba doesn't have a whole lot to do right now. Maybe he attacks.
Yeah, why not? So I believe it's Drew's turn here.
Yep, Drew's trying to figure out what to do, and it looks like he may just have to discard again.
This card's a Stifle.
That Narcomoeba might go all the way.
Very well could. Drew's got 17 turns to draw.
Now, Damon did dredge back the Stinkweed Imp, but he's got no way to get it back into the graveyard, other than, looks like he got up to
discard,
8.
Yeah. And Drew finally hits his 3rd land, 2nd in play. Has a Pyroblast or Pyroblast, sorry.
Yep.
Hydroblast is the blue one that hits the red card.
Now that's interesting, because that's even more sideboard cards than we thought he brought in, and so we're still trying to figure out what he was cutting out.
So we have Damon dredging.
Yep. And passing the turn to discard the Stinkweed Imp, which he had just used to dredge. Looks like he's going to be able to do it again.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Just in time for Drew to avoid a flashback Cabal Therapy too. For Drew to hit that Narcomoeba. So Brainstorm from Drew. Here, I think during his main phase.
Yep.
Trying to get some more lands, I would assume. It's not as easy for Drew to operate under such.
And there's a fetch.
Limited resources.
Yep. And there's he will
fetch and play Tarmogoyf.
Yep. So he got to put back 2 cards that he didn't care too much about. Get rid of them. That's one of the great interactions with Brainstorm and fetch lands. So we've got a bunch of stuff in the graveyard.
Yeah,
we've at least got instant, creature, land, sorcery.
And there goes a surgical extraction from Drew.
Yep.
As soon as he...
Planeswalker.
Yeah, Planeswalker's in the graveyard.
We don't have a bridge right now, so we don't have enchantment. And that surgical extraction.
What did it target? I mean, he had Narcomoeba.
Hit Narcomoeba.
It's interesting because he could have...
They're all in the bin, other than that one.
Yeah, I mean, he had an option to extract
1,
that
2,
at any point.
3, yep.
Didn't really need to wait there, but
now
he was just waiting because it was 1 more card in that dredge count, making him actually dredge it, and then waiting for that trigger to...
Now, one of the interesting interactions with a card like Surgical Extraction is, since you're searching hidden zones, you can miss a Narcomoeba in the deck, but you're actually not allowed to miss a Narcomoeba that's in a public zone, or the zone that's revealed. Since the hand, I believe the hand is revealed, it's not just look at target player's hand, you have to find any Narcomoebas that are there and any Narcomoebas that are in the graveyard, but you can miss it in the deck.
Fail to find in the deck.
Since it's a hidden zone.
I think there's a little bit of confusion about what...
Order, I believe, is the question. Rarely comes up, but in Legacy, there are cards where graveyard order matters.
One of those, what is it, Nether Spirit, Nether Shadow, one of those...
Phyrexian Furnace.
Yeah. So, Drew able to bring the beats. What? Death Spark. Yep. Bring the beats with the Goyf, and there's a second.
And there's another Goyf.
Looking very similar to game 2, where he extracted the Narcomoebas and had some Tarmogoyfs to beat in. The only thing he's missing is the Trinket Mage for the Tormod crypt.
The lack of bridge from belows and the lack of Narcomoebas is really causing problems for Damon here. He's got nothing in play. He's got no lands. It's looking like probably curtains here. Drew's swinging for 12 there because we now have six different types of cards. We're just missing tribal. Damon's going to go to 1, and I'm not sure what he could hit off of a dredge to do it. And Drew's showing him a Snapcaster Mage, saying, I can flashback the surgical extraction, get rid of whatever you're going to dread return.
Yeah, he's
showing him 3 Snapcaster Mages, in fact.
He's like, well...
And Damon says, I can't beat that.
Can't fight through that many Snapcaster Mages. Yeah, that was...
So Drew's able to fight. So we got to see the power of Dredge in game 1, and then the power of the sideboard cards against Dredge in games 2 and 3.
That's exactly what we were saying earlier, right? Like, you bring the hate against Dredge, and it's really tough to win. Game 1, no hate.
Certainly. If you don't want to lose against Dredge, you shouldn't.
Make sure, you can make sure that you don't lose ever against Dredge. So that was actually really fun.